The Anchored Billionaire, a story of corporate vengeance. Attention, lovers of drama and ultimate revenge. Have you ever wondered what happens when the quietest person in the room is actually the most powerful? Get ready, because this story is about to blow your mind. Hit the like button on this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single detail of our weekly stories. Tap that bell. Chapter 1, The Beginning of the End. I've outgrown you. I am vice president, and you are nothing, Marcus Thorne screamed, telling his wife of 5 years to pack her bags and leave their luxurious London flat. What he didn't know, as he tossed her a few £100 for a hotel, was that he wasn't just kicking out his wife. He was kicking out the secret undercover billionaire owner of the entire company he worked for. He thought he was closing a chapter. In reality, he was signing his own death warrant. This is the story of his epic fall. Marcus Thorne believed the world was divided into two types of people: rockets and anchors. He was, by his own estimation, a rocket. At 34, he was a senior director at Ascension Dynamics, one of London's most aggressive tech logistics firms. He worked in the gleaming glass and steel monolith known as the Ascension Tower, a spire dominating the capital's skyline. Marcus was handsome, sharp, and utterly ruthless. He wore £3,000 Tom Ford suits, had a standing reservation at the Chiltern Firehouse, and navigated the corporate world with the predatory grace of a shark. His wife, Ilara Vance, was the anchor. At least that's how he saw her. Ilara had kept her maiden name, something he had initially found charmingly independent, but now found vaguely irritating. She was, to Marcus, aggressively average. She was pretty in a quiet, forgettable way. She was smart, he supposed, but utterly lacked ambition. 5 years ago, he had met her when she was a university librarian. He had loved her calmness. Now, that calmness felt like stagnation, the ultimate proof of her mediocrity. She also worked at Ascension Dynamics, but while he operated on the 70th floor, she was a mid-level data analyst on the 25th floor. They commuted separately, rarely discussed work, and moved in entirely different orbits. He was a rocket, ascending. She was processing invoices. "Ilara, are you even listening to me?" The view from their living room was a stunning panorama of Hyde Park, a view he felt he had earned. Ilara looked up from her laptop. She was curled up on the sofa, dressed in a simple gray tracksuit. "Sorry, Marcus, just finishing a reconciliation report," he scoffed. "Riveting. I just spent 3 hours in a strategy session with Carla Jennings. We're restructuring the entire European logistics arm, and you're reconciling." He threw his leather briefcase onto a chair. Ilara closed the laptop. Her expression was placid. "Someone has to make sure the numbers add up, Marcus. Otherwise, your grand strategies are just expensive fiction. Save the philosophy, darling. I'm telling you, this new acquisition by Global Ventures is shaking things up. The new owners are cleaning house. They don't care about reconciliation. They care about vision." Global Ventures was the mysterious private equity firm that had bought Ascension Dynamics 6 months earlier. They were ghosts. No one had ever met the new owner, rumored to be a reclusive high-money heir, referred to in memos only as the chair. "Carla thinks I'm the lead candidate for the new VP position," Marcus said, pouring himself a glass of Macallan 25. "She's essentially in charge of the transition, and she sees my potential." Carla Jennings. The name hung in the air. Carla was his direct superior, the executive VP. She was everything Ilara was not: blonde, loud, surgically sharp, and dripping in Cartier. Marcus and Carla had been having an affair for 8 months. It was, he rationalized, a merger of talents. "That's wonderful, Marcus," Ilara said, her voice quiet. "You've worked hard." "I certainly have," he said, "and I'm not going to let anything or anyone hold me back." He looked at her, curled on the sofa, and a cold sense of decision settled in his stomach. She was an anchor, and it was time to cut the rope. He was thinking about his future. He was thinking about Carla, the VP title, the massive bonus he and Carla planned to liberate from their flagship project, Project Odyssey. He wasn't thinking about the laptop Ilara had just closed. It wasn't a reconciliation report. It was an encrypted, real-time audit of the entire company's finances, sent directly to a private server in Switzerland. And the name on the account she was flagging for irregular expenditure, the Project Odyssey account, was his own. "I'm going to shower," he said, already mentally drafting his breakup speech. "All right, Marcus," Ilara replied, opening her laptop again. "Have a good evening." He walked off, failing to notice the flash of ice in her eyes. He was a rocket, all right. But rockets, when they fail, don't just veer off course. They crash. Audience interaction point 1. What would you do if you discovered your partner, who you think you know everything about, was actually hiding a secret this big? Leave your comment below. Chapter 2. The Cruel Decision. The promotion came on a Tuesday. Marcus was summoned to the 70th floor, not his usual office, but the executive conference room. Carla Jennings was waiting, flanked by 2 stony-faced men from HR. "Marcus," Carla said, her smile as bright and hard as a diamond. "On behalf of Ascension Dynamics and our new partners, Global Ventures, I am pleased to officially offer you the position of Vice President of Global Strategy." Marcus felt a surge of pure adrenaline. This was it, the final step before the C-suite. "Carla, I'm truly honored," he said, projecting a mask of humble gratitude. "You'll be overseeing the full rollout of Project Odyssey," she continued, handing him a new access card. "This comes with a significant pay bump, a new corner office on the 72nd floor, and a bonus package we will negotiate." The look she gave him was electric. The HR reps clapped politely. As soon as they were gone, Carla rounded the desk and wrapped her arms around his neck. "We did it, darling," she whispered hoarsely. "We are the new power couple of this entire tower." "Just the tower," Marcus murmured, pulling her closer. "I was thinking the whole city." "One step at a time," she laughed. "Now, one last matter." "What is it?" "Your wife." Carla's face hardened. "I cannot have my new VP, my partner, going home to a low-level analyst. It's unseemly. It looks weak." "The board values decisiveness, Marcus. Global Ventures values strength. If we're going to celebrate this, I want to know you've cleared the deck. Cut the anchor, Marcus. Tonight." Marcus nodded, his heart beating with a mix of exhilaration and cold resolve. Consider it done. That afternoon, he didn't go straight home. He and Carla went to the Modern, drinking champagne that cost more than Ilara's monthly salary. They mapped out their plans, not just for Project Odyssey, but for their real project. Using the massive, intentionally inflated project budget to siphon millions. They would create shell companies, submit falsified invoices, and divert a percentage of the capital to an offshore account in the Canary Islands. It was Carla's idea, but Marcus had perfected the methodology. It was foolproof. When he arrived at the flat, it was nearly 11 p.m. He was flushed with victory and champagne. Ilara was in the kitchen, preparing a simple lunch for the next day. The sheer domesticity of the act filled him with a sudden, sharp repulsion. "We need to talk," he said, throwing his keys onto the marble counter. Ilara looked up, her expression unreadable. "All right. I got the promotion, Ilara. I'm the new VP." "I know," she said. "The memo went out this afternoon. Congratulations." Her lack of enthusiasm was, to him, the final insult. "That's it? Congratulations? This is the most important moment of my career, and you act like I just found a 20-pound note." "I'm just surprised," she said, closing the container. With Global Ventures' new oversight, I assumed they'd do more thorough reviews. What is that supposed to mean? He snapped. It means, Ilara said, finally turning to face him, that the Project Odyssey budget is inflated by nearly 40%. The projections are based on flawed market data. It's a house of cards, Marcus. He was stunned. Not just that she knew about the project, but that she had the audacity to criticize it. You're a data processor, Ilara, he spat, his voice laced with contempt. You sit on the 25th floor and check spreadsheets. I'm on the 72nd floor designing the future. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know the numbers, she said simply, and these numbers are a lie. That was it, the final straw. You know what? You're right, he said, walking to the hall closet and pulling out his old canvas duffel bag. He tossed it onto the floor between them. I've been blind, but now I see. I am a rocket, Ilara, and you are a lead-lined, concrete-filled anchor, and I am cutting the rope. Tonight. Ilara looked at the bag. What are you doing? I'm ending this. I want a divorce. He pulled out his wallet. He took out all the cash he had, about 800 pounds, and threw it onto the counter. This is a luxury building. I can't have you squatting. I want you gone, tonight. You're kicking me out? She said, her voice dangerously quiet. No, I'm freeing myself, he corrected. I've outgrown you. I've outgrown this farce of a marriage. I'm moving on to bigger and better things. I'm with Carla Jennings now. We're partners, real partners. She understands me. She's on my level. He expected tears. He expected pleading. He expected something. Ilara just looked at him, and deep, unreadable sadness in her eyes. It wasn't the sadness of a victim. It was the sadness of a judge, about to pass sentence. Carla Jennings, she repeated, as if savoring the name. The woman who has been signing off on your fraudulent expense reports for 6 months, I see. Marcus froze. What did you say? Pack your bags, Ilara, he said, his voice dropping to a growl. I want you out of my flat in 1 hour. Ilara nodded slowly. Your flat? She looked around the multi-million-pound apartment, at the floor-to-ceiling windows, at the artwork on the walls. Yes, I suppose you're right. She picked up the duffel bag and walked toward their bedroom. Marcus, feeling the first prickle of unease, poured another drink. He had done it. He was free. An hour later, Ilara emerged. She had packed a small suitcase. She wore a simple black coat. She looked exactly what she was. A discarded wife, a terminated employee. She walked to the door. Ilara, wait, he said, feeling a sudden unwelcome pang of, was it guilt? No, pity. Don't make this ugly. My lawyer will send you a standard severance package. Just sign the papers and we can all move on. Ilara paused, her hand on the doorknob. You're right, Marcus. This won't be ugly. She turned back to look at him one last time. Her face was a mask of cold porcelain. It will be thorough. She opened the door and walked out, closing it gently behind her. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. It was done. He downed his scotch, triumphant, and sent a text to Carla. Anchor cut. Audience interaction point. Do you think Marcus will regret this decision? Or will his arrogance lead him to an even deeper abyss? I want to read your theories in the comments. Chapter 3. The Queen Unmasked, Ilara. Vance walked out the service entrance of the building. She didn't want to see the concierge, who always greeted her as Mrs. Thorne, whom she always gave a generous Christmas bonus. The November air was frigid, biting at her face. She stopped on the pavement of the street, just another woman in a dark coat, holding a single suitcase. Marcus had been right. She looked insignificant. A sleek black Maybach S-Class, pulled silently to the curb. So dark, it looked like a chunk of night sky. A man in a dark suit, Arthur, her head of security, stepped out and opened the rear door. He asked no questions. "Good evening, Ms. Ventura," he said, taking her bag. "Arthur," she replied, her voice regaining a strength it hadn't held for 5 years. She slid onto the plush cream leather. The car smelled of polished wood and silent power. The name on her analyst paycheck, her driver's license, and her marriage certificate read Ilara Navarro. This was her mother's maiden name. It was the name she chose when, after her father's death, she decided to infiltrate the empire he had left her. She had wanted to understand the $80 billion behemoth, Global Ventures, from the ground up. She had wanted to find the rot, and she had. She had also fallen in love. Foolishly, she had met Marcus at a university gala she attended as a mid-level benefactor. He had been dynamic, charming, and seemed so refreshingly ambitious. He didn't know who she was. He saw Ilara Navarro, the librarian. She had loved that. She had loved him. She had built a life with him, maintaining her cover. She had bought their flat through a shell company, one of the hundreds she controlled, and rented it to him at a rate Marcus could afford. His enormous salary, which he was so proud of, was a drop in the ocean of her personal wealth. She had joined Ascension Dynamics, one of her own subsidiaries, to be close to him and to oversee the transition after her holding company acquired it. She had wanted to be a wife, not a chairwoman, which is why they had called her an anchor. Ilara picked up the encrypted satellite phone from the armrest. She dialed a number. It rang once. "David, it's Ilara." The voice on the other end was warm, but instantly alert. David Fuentes, the CEO of Global Ventures, and her late father's most trusted advisor. "Ilara, are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm in the Maybach. I'm out." The word was caught in her throat. "He kicked me out, David. He's with Carla Jennings." There was a heavy silence. David had warned her about Marcus. He had seen the man's ruthless ambition. "That absolute idiot," David said, his voice hardening. "What are your orders, Ms. Ventura?" The address, Ms. Ventura, snapped her back to reality. The heartbroken wife, Ilara Navarro, retreated. The chairwoman, Ilara Ventura, took her place. "He thinks I'm a low-level analyst he just made homeless. He thinks he and Carla are about to get rich off Project Odyssey. He has no idea you've been flagging his invoices, does he?" David asked. "He has no idea. He just called me an anchor and said I didn't understand his vision. So it's time we gave him a lesson in strategic oversight. Activate Protocol Ventura. I want a total immediate lockdown on all assets associated with Project Odyssey, effective 9 a.m. tomorrow. I want his new office, the one on the 72nd floor, locked down. Change the security protocols." "Done," David said. "And David, the offshore accounts, the ones in the Canaries he and Carla have been feeding for months. I don't just want them frozen, I want them seized. I've had the passwords for weeks. Drain them to the last penny. Transfer everything to the Ventura Foundation Relief Fund by tomorrow morning." David let out a low whistle. "That's several £1 million, Ilara. That's a bold move before the audit goes public." "He called it a severance package," Ilara said, her voice turning icy. "Consider it a donation. And one more thing. The flat. The one on the street. I want the locks changed before 8 a.m. Have Arthur's team pull my personal effects tonight and put the rest of his and Carla's belongings into a storage unit in East London. The property is to be cleaned and listed for sale by noon. And Mr. Thorne? He's a VP now. He's a rocket. Let's see how high he can fly with no wings and no fuel. Don't let him know any of this is happening. Let him walk into that building tomorrow thinking he's the king of the world." "And you, Ilara?" David asked, his voice softening. The Maybach was now crossing the Thames, heading toward the family's triplex penthouse in Knightsbridge, a home Marcus never knew existed. "I'm going to take a bath," Ilara said. "Then I'm going to get some sleep. And tomorrow morning, you and I are presiding over an emergency board meeting." It's time the chairwoman finally came into the office. She hung up. She leaned her head against the cool glass and watched the city lights blur. The tears finally came, not of sadness, but of cold, clarifying rage. Audience interaction point 3. What do you think of this unexpected twist? Do you think Marcus stands a chance against Ilara Ventura? Tell us what you think will happen next. Chapter 4. The Rocket's Face. Marcus Thorne woke up in his own bed, alone, and felt magnificent. He stretched, the Egyptian cotton sheets cool against his skin. The silence in the flat was golden. No Ilara pottering around the kitchen. No quiet, judging presence. Just him, his ambition, and the stunning park view. He texted Carla, "Morning, partner. See you on the 72nd floor." He took extra time getting ready. He chose a crisp new Brioni suit. He put on the Patek Philippe watch Carla had given him, the one he'd told Ilara was a client gift. He felt like a king. He grabbed his briefcase and his access card, his shiny new VP-level card, and headed out. The first crack in his perfect day appeared at the lift. He swiped his new card for the executive lift. Access denied. He frowned. He swiped again. Access denied. He sighed, annoyed. A glitch. He was forced to take the regular staff lift, squeezing in with analysts and administrators. He recognized a few faces from Ilara's department on the 25th floor. They looked at him with a strange, nervous energy. He ignored them, getting off on the 70th floor and walking toward the executive staircase. He swiped his card at the door to the 72nd floor executive wing. Access denied. Now he was angry. He called Carla. "My new card isn't working," he snapped. "I'm locked out of the staircase." "What?" Carla sounded distracted, her voice tight. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm in my office. Just meet me in the main boardroom. We have a problem." Marcus felt a twist of irritation. "A problem? We are the solution, darling." "What is it?" "It's Project Odyssey," she whispered. "The funding it's been flagged." Marcus's blood went cold. Flagged by whom? Compliance? Worse. It's a presidential-level flag. All assets are frozen. All payments. All wire transfers. Everything. "That's impossible," Marcus said, starting to walk quickly toward the boardroom. "We're the only ones with the authorization codes." "Apparently not. Marcus, the entire budget is locked down, and that's not all." Her voice cracked. "The Canary account. It's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean empty," she shrieked, and he could hear the panic in her voice. "Zero balance. Every single pound transferred out. I can't trace it. It's just gone." Marcus stopped walking. He was standing in the middle of the 70th floor atrium. People were starting to stare. He lowered his voice to a furious whisper. "That's 5 million pounds. How can it be gone? This has to be an internal rival. Someone knows. Someone is setting us up. We have to fix this, Marcus," Carla said, her bravado evaporating. "David Fuentes just called an emergency board meeting for 10 a.m. in person. He said the chairwoman is flying in. The chairwoman. She's finally going to show her face." Marcus's mind raced. This was bad, but perhaps it was also an opportunity. "This is it," he said, regaining confidence. "This is our chance. We walk into that meeting. We present Project Odyssey. We show them the vision. We blame the issue on some low-level accounting error. We'll blame Ilara's department. It's perfect. Sloppy work by a mid-level analyst. We'll say we found the discrepancy and locked down the funds ourselves to protect the company. It will make us look like heroes." Carla was silent for a moment. "You would throw your wife under the bus?" "I don't have a wife, remember?" Marcus said coldly. "I cut the anchor. Are you with me now? We're the Rockets, Carla. We're going to own this." "Okay," Carla breathed, steadying herself. Okay, you're right. It's a data entry error. We found it. We are the heroes. Let's grab our presentation. My office. I'm on my way. He hung up and headed to her office. He swiped his old access card. Access denied. He swiped the new one. Access denied. What the hell? He muttered. He knocked hard. Carla yanked the door open. Your card too? She asked. Both of them. Something is seriously wrong with security. Just let's grab the presentation and go. They grabbed their laptops and headed to the main boardroom. The air in the executive wing was thick with tension. No one was speaking. Everyone was waiting. Marcus felt a single cold bead of sweat track down his spine. He had attributed the card issues to a glitch. He had attributed the frozen funds to a rival. But as he stood outside the 80th floor boardroom, watching the most powerful people in the company enter with grim, silent faces, he realized this wasn't a glitch. And it wasn't a rival. It was an execution. The 80th floor boardroom, the observatory, was a legendary place. 3 of its walls were 30-foot glass panels that offered a godlike view of the city from the Palace of Westminster to the Gherkin. The 4th wall was a seamless black digital screen. In the center was a colossal single-piece mahogany table, so polished it looked like a dark, calm lake. Marcus and Carla took their usual seats mid-table. They were vice presidents, but today they felt like interns. The entire executive board was present. David Fuentes, the Global Ventures CEO, sat at the head of the table. His face was granite. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, David began, his voice amplified by the room's hidden microphones. As you know, Global Ventures acquired Ascension Dynamics 6 months ago. Until now, we have allowed the existing management structure to remain while we conducted a thorough review. He paused, letting the tension build. That review is complete. It has uncovered irregularities, significant, systemic, and in some cases, criminal irregularities. A nervous murmur rippled through the room. Marcus felt his neck tighten. He exchanged a glance with Carla. She was pale. We have discovered that certain flagship projects have been used as vehicles for embezzlement. We have found conflicts of interest, corporate waste, and a culture of arrogance that is unacceptable. David looked out across the table, his eyes seeming to land on every person. These issues are so severe, David said, that the chairwoman of Global Ventures has decided to personally oversee the restructuring. She has been on site, in this very building for 5 months, conducting a silent audit. Marcus's blood ran cold. On site? He had never seen a chairwoman. He had never seen any new owner. She has been watching, David said, and she has seen everything. I will now turn the floor over to her. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the chairwoman of Global Ventures, Ms. Ilara Ventura. Marcus glanced at the name on the digital screen. Ventura. He didn't make the connection. Not yet. He, like everyone else, turned to the main door. The door opened, and Ilara walked in. This was not the Ilara he had kicked out last night. This was not Ilara Navarro, the anchor. This woman wore a bespoke, deep navy trouser suit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair, which she used to wear in a simple bun, was down, styled in professional, elegant waves. Her face, free of the natural makeup she usually wore, was now defined, sharp, and absolutely cold. She was flanked by 2 bodyguards, and a man Marcus recognized with a jolt of horror. Arthur Gonzalez, head of the Crown Prosecution Service's White-Collar Crime Division. Ilara walked to the head of the table. David Fuentes pulled out her chair. The room was so silent, Marcus could hear the sound of his own heart hammering against his ribs. Carla made a small, choked noise, like a dying animal. Marcus's brain simply disconnected. He refused to process the data. He was looking at his wife. He was looking at the woman he had tossed $800 at. He was looking at the nothing he had discarded. And she was standing at the head of a table where he had just fought for his life. "Please be seated," Alara said. Her voice was different. The warmth was gone. It was crisp, clear, and brimming with absolute authority. She sat, and the rest of the board followed. Marcus and Carla remained standing, frozen like statues in a tragedy. "Mr. Thorne, Ms. Jennings, you look surprised," Alara said, her eyes fixed on them. "Please sit down. This meeting is, after all, primarily about you." Marcus slumped into his chair. His vision blurred. He couldn't breathe. Alara tapped a control on the table. The massive screen on the wall lit up. "Let's discuss Project Odyssey," she said. "Project Odyssey," Alara Ventura began, "was, according to Mr. Thorne's own proposal, a paradigm-shifting logistics solution, a way to optimize our European distribution using predictive AI. She looked directly at Marcus. "A brilliant vision, Marcus. Truly. I was impressed when I read the initial report." Marcus opened his mouth, but only a dry, clicking sound came out. "The problem," Alara continued, "is the vision was fiction. The budget, however, was very real." A complex flowchart appeared on the massive screen. It showed the $200 million Project Odyssey budget, and branching off it like tumors were red lines. "Mr. Thorne and Ms. Jennings," Alara said, her voice cutting through the silence, "created 3 shell companies: Jennings Logistics, Thorne Investments, and Odyssey Consulting. All 3, I'm sure you'll be shocked to learn, trace back to an omnibus account in the Canary Islands." She clicked a button. Bank statements flashed on the screen. Account numbers, routing numbers. Over the last 6 months, Mr. Thorne and Ms. Jennings have approved $15.8 million in consulting fees and expedited shipping advances to these 3 companies. Companies which have no employees, no assets, and no function other than receiving stolen money. Carla finally found her voice. "That's not true. Those are legitimate partners. This is slander." "Is it?" Alara said, her voice dangerously soft. She clicked again. A new image filled the screen. It was a security photo from a bank in Gran Canaria. It showed Marcus and Carla dressed in beachwear, signing documents at a banker's desk. The timestamp was 3 months ago, when they told the board they were at a logistics conference in Berlin. Carla Jennings' face turned from pale to a mottled, subitonically green. You, Marcus stammered, his mind finally catching up. "Alara, you were the analyst on the 25th floor," Alara said. "I was. Alara Navarro. Navarro is my mother's maiden name. I joined Ascension to find the rot in my new company. I expected to find waste. I expected to find incompetence. I did not expect to find it in my own home." She rose and walked slowly around the table, her heels clicking on the floor. "I did not expect the man I was married to, the man whose career I silently subsidized, whose flat I bought, whose genius was built on my family's legacy, to be the ringleader." She stopped directly behind Marcus, placing her hands on the back of his chair. He flinched as if she had hit him. "You called me an anchor, Marcus. You said I was holding you back while you were busy designing the future. But you weren't designing anything. You were just a common thief. A very, very stupid common thief." "Alara, please," he whispered, the humiliation so profound it was physical. "We can fix this. It was a mistake. It was her." He pointed a trembling finger at Carla. "She forced me into it. She—" "Silence!" roared David Fuentes, slamming his hand on the table. "You will address the chairwoman as Ms. Ventura." Alara held up a hand. "It's all right, David. Desperation is appropriate." She returned to the head of the table. "Ms. Jennings, your services are obviously terminated. Your shares are forfeit. Your pension is gone. Per your contract, we are invoking the moral turpitude clause. You will leave this building with nothing. Security will escort you." Two uniformed guards stepped forward and grabbed Carla by the arms. "You can't do this!" Carla shrieked, her mask of composure shattered. "Marcus, tell them! Tell them!" Marcus only stared at the table, his world reduced to the polished grain of the mahogany. "As for you, Marcus," Ilara said. Marcus looked up, his eyes pleading. This was his wife. Beneath all of this, she was his wife. She had loved him. "Ilara, darling, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was an idiot. We can go to therapy. We can." Ilara looked at him, and for the first time he saw no anger, no sadness. He saw nothing. Just a vacuum. "Mr. Thorne," she said, "you seem to be under the impression this is a marital dispute." She nodded at the prosecution man. "Mr. Gonzalez, he's all yours." Mr. Gonzalez and two plainclothes detectives stepped forward. "Marcus Thorne," Gonzalez said, his voice ringing out. "You are under arrest for grand theft, wire fraud, and embezzlement." One of the detectives pulled Marcus's arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs on. The cold, metallic click echoed in the vast, silent room. You bitch! You set yourself up, Marcus," Ilara said, turning her back on him as the detectives dragged him away. "You just kicked the wrong person out of the house." She looked at the remaining board members, still in shock. "Now," she said, her voice becoming utterly professional, "let's discuss the future of this company." The downfall wasn't a slow slide. It was a sudden, violent impact. Marcus Thorne, VP of Global Strategy, was no longer a name. He was a case number. He spent the first 8 hours in a central holding cell. The Brioni suit, his armor of success, felt like a carnival costume. It was wrinkled, and he was sure it smelled of the sour stench of the concrete cell, a mix of old sweat, bleach, and human despair. Denial was his only shield. This was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a corporate power play. Ilara was angry. She was blowing off steam. Once she calmed down, once he could talk to her, he could fix this. He just needed to get to a phone. He needed to call his lawyer, the shark from a prestigious firm who handled his, now ridiculously tiny, stock options. When he finally made his one phone call, his high-powered lawyer's number went straight to an icy-voiced virtual assistant who informed him, "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne, but our firm will not be representing you in this matter. There appears to be a severe conflict of interest." "What conflict?" he yelled into the receiver. "Tell them who I am." "We know who you are, sir," the voice replied, dripping scorn. "We represent Global Ventures Holdings. Have a nice day." Click. She had already isolated him. Ilara, his quiet, simple, average wife, had a legal firewall that could repel an army. The panic, cold and slick, began to seep through his denial. He was forced to call his parents in a small village in the Cotswolds. He had to call collect, his mother's sobs, his father's stunned, furious silence. It was a new kind of humiliation. "They say the bail is £5 million, Marcus," his father had wailed. "5 million? What the hell did you do? It's a mistake, Dad. They said you're a flight risk. They said you have offshore accounts. We're going to have to mortgage the house, Mark. The house you grew up in. We'll be there in the morning." The shame burned hotter than his rage. He had built an empire, he had told them. He was a rocket. Now he was just a son who had destroyed his parents' retirement. When he was released 36 hours later, on bail paid for by his father's pension fund, the world he knew was gone. His face was on the front page of the Times. "Tower of Greed," the headline screamed, with a split photo of his smug corporate headshot next to his new, gaunt mugshot. Worse, the perp walk had been a masterpiece of psychological torture orchestrated by Ilara. Security had diverted him not through the back exit, but through the main marble atrium of the Ascension Tower. It was 12:30 p.m., the peak lunch hour. He was paraded in handcuffs past hundreds of his former colleagues. He saw analysts he had terrorized, managers he had stepped on, and the entire data team from the 25th floor, Ilara's old department, who had gathered by the lifts. They didn't jeer. They didn't gasp. They just looked. One woman he recognized, Sarah, who used to sit 3 desks down from Ilara, simply stared, took a slow sip of her coffee, and smiled. It was the smile of a person watching a tyrant finally get what they deserve. Audience interaction point. That's a key moment. Do you think Marcus will have the decency to apologize? Or will his arrogance persist even now? Give us your take in the comments box. He stumbled out onto the street, his father posting bail with a cashier's check that represented all their savings. He was handed a small plastic bag with his wallet, his Patek Philippe, which the prosecution surprisingly hadn't kept, and his phone. He was left in the suit and the £800 cash he had tried to give Ilara. The irony was so bitter, it tasted like acid. I have to go to the flat, he told his father, his voice raw. I have to talk to her. I have to get my things. Dad, the lawyer we found. I don't care. I have to see her. He hailed a cab, a yellow taxi. The first he'd been in 5 years, to the street. He felt like a ghost, haunting his own life. He walked into the gleaming lobby, his heart pounding. Antonio, the concierge, the man Marcus had tipped $500 last Christmas, came out from behind his marble desk. His face was a mask of professional regret. Mr. Thorne, I'm afraid I cannot let you go upstairs. Antonio, don't be ridiculous, Marcus snapped, his old arrogance flaring. This is my home. I live here. Open the lift. I am sorry, sir. My instructions are clear, Antonio said, his voice firm. He was no longer looking at a resident. He was looking at a problem. You are not a resident here. You are on the permanent trespass list. Trespass list? In my own building? I'll have you fired for this, Antonio. Antonio sighed, a small, sad sound. Sir, with respect, you appear not to understand. You didn't just live in Ms. Ventura's flat. You lived in Ms. Ventura's building. The Ventura Trust has owned this entire tower since it was constructed in 1998. She is, your landlady. The blood drained from Marcus's face. The entire tower, his 72nd floor office, the gym, the lobby, the flat. It had all been hers. He wasn't just a rat in a trap. He had been a rat in her custom-built glass and steel maze. My things, he stammered, his rage collapsing into a pathetic gasp. My clothes, my files. All non-personal items were removed by Ms. Ventura's staff and placed into a storage unit in East London, Antonio said, reading from a memo. A package was sent to your attorney. My attorney? Marcus said, bewildered. I don't have... Just then, a man in a cheap suit tapped him on the shoulder. Marcus Thorne. Yes, you've been served. The man handed him a thick envelope and walked off. Marcus tore it open, standing in the lobby that was no longer his. It was the divorce petition. It wasn't a simple filing. It was a 200-page tactical nuclear bomb. Grounds, adultery, conspiracy to commit grand larceny, and severe financial malfeasance. It detailed, with timestamps, every meeting he had with Carla. Hotel receipts, dinner bills. It even included a transcript of a call he had made from his private office line, booking their Canary conference trip. But the asset division was the true execution. Flat, single and separate property of Ilara Ventura. Mr. Thorne is not entitled to any stake. Vehicles: Audi R8, Range Rover. Corporate assets: leases terminated, repossessed. Bank accounts: all joint accounts frozen. A forensic audit is being conducted to recover all funds spent by Mr. Thorne on non-marital activities, including all gifts, travel, and entertainment for his co-conspirator, Ms. Carla Jennings. She wasn't just divorcing him, she was billing him for the affair. At the bottom, there was a handwritten note from his new public defender. "Marcus, call me. Your preliminary hearing is tomorrow, and whatever you do, do not attempt to contact your wife. Also, Carla Jennings cut a deal. She is testifying against you. She says you were the mastermind and threatened her job if she didn't comply." He was alone. Absolute. Completely alone. Carla had saved herself. His contacts weren't returning his calls. His bank accounts were locked. His credit cards, he discovered, were all supplementary cards on Alara's main account. He ended up in a $49 a night motel in Hackney, one with a flickering neon vacancy sign that cast a sickly red glow over the stained carpet. He paid cash, using the last of the 800. His $3,000 suit was now his only clothing. He slumped onto the lumpy bed, the springs groaning in protest. He turned on the small, buzzing TV, and there she was, Alara Ventura. She was being interviewed on BBC News. She was incandescent. She wore a simple, elegant red dress. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was quiet and confident. The host was hanging on her every word. "Ms. Ventura," the host said, "it's an incredible story. You've taken the business world by storm. In your first official act as chairwoman, you uncovered a $16 million fraud and restructured your entire executive team. People are calling you the Inquisitor Ventura. What is your secret to such decisive action?" Alara smiled, a small, polite smile that did not reach her eyes. She looked directly into the camera, and Marcus felt as though she were looking right at him, sitting in his sordid motel room. "It's no secret, really," she said, her voice as smooth and cold as glass. "I just believe in accountability, whether it's in the boardroom or in your personal life. You cannot build a stable future on a rotten foundation. You have to be willing to find the rot, the weakness, and cut it out, no matter how personal it is." The host nodded, mesmerized. "That's a harsh philosophy." "It's the only one that works," Alara said. She leaned forward, as if sharing a secret with the world. "My father always taught me that some things in life look like they're supporting you, but they're actually just dragging you down. You have to be willing to cut the anchor." She paused, and her smile finally reached her eyes, cold and bright, like a winter star. "And watch the dead weight sink." The phone in Marcus's hand vibrated. It was a text from his new public defender. "The prosecution just added a new charge, money laundering. They found another account in the Cayman Islands. They are pulling the bail, Marcus. They are coming for you." Marcus stared at the TV, the face of the woman he had discarded, the rocket, the anchor. He had been so wrong. He wasn't the rocket. He was, and always had been, the dead weight, and the bottom of the ocean was rising up to receive him. Final audience interaction. Significant ending. Do you think Alara should have given Marcus one last chance, or was her act of vengeance a deserved justice? Tell me what you think in the comments. The final, meaningful message arrived a week later. A week of unadulterated, pure hell. Marcus's lawyer, a third-rate public defender, had been blunt. "You're cooked, Mr. Thorne. They have bank records, surveillance photos, and a sworn statement from your ex-wife. She's not just the victim here, she is the star witness and the lead of the prosecution. They're offering you a deal. 10 years, Marcus had choked. 10 years? For a white-collar crime? For stealing nearly $16 million from one of the most powerful women in London. You're lucky they're not asking for 20. He was out on bail, but he was a prisoner. His name was Toxic. He tried to get a job, any job. The moment they typed his name into Google, the interview ended. He was living on the scraps of his parents' credit card. Carla, he heard, had fared even worse. She had no family wealth to fall back on. She had turned King's evidence, agreeing to testify against Marcus in exchange for a reduced sentence. That was the last text he received from an unknown number. I'm taking the deal. You're on your own. Rot in hell. He had one last, desperate idea. The storage unit. Ilara's message had said his belongings were in a unit in East London. He still had the key to their old shared storage unit, one they'd had before the flat. Maybe she had used that one. Maybe. Just maybe. There was something in there, old documents, cash he had hidden, anything. He took a bus to the vast, grim storage facility in East London. He found the unit, 712. He put his key in the lock. It clicked open. He rolled up the metal door, his heart hammering with a sliver of hope. The unit was almost empty. In the center of the dusty concrete floor sat a single, solitary object. It wasn't a box of cash. It wasn't his expensive suits. It wasn't his golf clubs or his designer furniture. It was the old canvas duffel bag he had thrown at Ilara. Taped to the handle was an envelope. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside wasn't a legal document. It was a single sheet of paper. It was the £800 cash he had tossed onto the counter. Below the notes, a single sentence was written in Ilara's elegant, precise handwriting. You're a rocket, Marcus. Have a good flight. He collapsed to his knees, the useless money fluttering to the floor. It was the final, definitive insult. She hadn't just taken his future. She had given him back his past. She had given him back exactly what he thought he was worth. He looked at the empty unit, the single bag, and the cash. He finally understood. She hadn't just been investigating him for 6 months. She had been judging him for 5 years. She had given him every chance to be a better man. And he had failed every single test. He thought of that night. I've outgrown you. What a joke. He had never been on her level. He was sitting there, a broken man in a cheap suit. When his phone rang, it was his lawyer. Marcus, the lawyer said, his voice muted. The prosecution just called. Ms. Ventura's legal team submitted one final piece of evidence. It's bad. What is it? Marcus whispered, already knowing it was over. A recording from your flat. It appears the whole penthouse had a security system, one you didn't know about. They have audio of your entire breakup. They have you confessing to your relationship with Ms. Jennings. They have you threatening your wife. And worst of all, they have you kicking her out. The lawyer sighed. The prosecution is withdrawing the plea deal. They're going to trial. They are no longer asking for 10 years, Marcus. They are asking for the maximum. 25. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the concrete. He stared into the darkness of the empty storage unit, a tomb he had built for himself. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Thorne, the rocket, finally truly understood the crushing, infinite weight of the anchor. And so, the rocket was grounded. Forever. Epilogue. The True Cost of Arrogance, Chapter 5, The Aftermath and the New Dawn. The trial of Marcus Thorne and Carla Jennings became a media spectacle, a masterclass in corporate accountability orchestrated by Ilara Ventura. Dubbed the Odyssey fraud by the press, it exposed the shocking depths of greed and arrogance in the city's financial elite. The prosecution's case was airtight. With Carla Jennings' testimony securing a reduced sentence and the devastating audio recording, the final gift from the anchor, Marcus had no defense. He was convicted on all counts: grand theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. The judge, making an example of the case, handed down a sentence of 20 years for Marcus Thorne. He was sent to a federal penitentiary, a gray, crushing world far removed from the marbled towers of ascension dynamics. The suits were replaced by rough cotton, the Macallan 20 by sour water, and the view of Hyde Park by a cracked concrete wall. In the quiet solitude of his cell, Marcus finally had the time he had always craved for strategy. But now he only had one opponent, the wreckage of his past choices. He thought of Alara constantly, not with the contempt he once held, but with a horrifying clarity. He had mistaken her patience for passivity, her quiet life for mediocrity, and her love for blind devotion. The woman he called an anchor had, in the end, been the weight that grounded him and the force that launched her into the stratosphere. Meanwhile, the Ascension Tower was cleansed. Ilara Ventura's silent audit had removed nearly 30% of the executive team. She didn't seek the limelight, but she couldn't avoid it. The press began to worship her as the embodiment of integrity and decisive power. She remained the chairwoman of global ventures, but her focus was less on acquisitions and more on building. She steered Ascension Dynamics toward sustainable practices, ethical partnerships, and a culture of meritocracy, proving that ruthlessness was not the only path to success. The Maybach still took her to the Ascension Tower, but now she presided from the legendary 80th floor observatory, the room where she had executed her final strategy. Her presence there wasn't a symbol of vengeance, but of ownership. The company, her family's legacy, was finally healthy. She never remarried. She dated occasionally, successful, intelligent men who understood her world. But she was guarded. The lesson Marcus taught her was profound. The deepest betrayals come from the places you believe yourself to be safe. But she was not bitter. Her life was full. She continued to patronize the arts, endowed libraries in her mother's name, and found solace in the simple, real things. Chapter 6. The Last Piece. 5 years after the conviction, Ilara was preparing to leave her Knightsbridge penthouse for a rare weekend getaway. Her security team, still led by the ever-vigilant Arthur, had cleared her path. As she checked her handbag, a small, discreet package arrived via special courier. It was addressed only to Ms. E. Ventura and was postmarked from the prison where Marcus was held. Arthur intercepted it. "Ms. Ventura, this is unscheduled. I'll open it." "No, Arthur," she said, her voice soft. "I'll take it." She knew instantly what it was. It wasn't a threat or a plea. It was the final, required step. She opened the simple brown box. Inside was a small, velvet-lined case. It contained the Patek Philippe watch that Carla had given Marcus, the one he had boasted about, the one he had lied to Ilara about being a client gift. It was the last piece of expensive, ill-gotten luxury that he still possessed, a constant reminder of the day he chose superficiality over substance. Pinned to the velvet lining was a folded piece of prison-issue paper. Ilara unfolded it. The handwriting was no longer bold and arrogant. It was small and neat. "Ilara, the lawyers needed this for the final forfeiture document. It's the last item that belongs to the fraud. I didn't send it to the lawyers. I sent it to you. I'm not writing this for forgiveness. You were right about everything. I was the dead weight. The flat, the job, the money. It was all yours. I just didn't see you. I only saw what I thought you were. That was my true crime, not the money. I finally understand the difference between being a VP and being the chairwoman. One is a title. The other is gravity. I hope you find the piece I threw away." M. Ilara set the note on the marble counter. She picked up the watch. The heavy gold was cold in her hand. It was beautiful, but utterly meaningless. She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city that she silently governed. She didn't feel triumph. She felt a profound, quiet relief. The game was truly over. She had wanted justice, and she had received it. She had wanted to save her company, and she had. But most importantly, by cutting the anchor, she hadn't just saved her fortune. She had saved herself from a rotten life. She dropped the Patek Philippe watch into a small waste bin next to the counter. It landed with a soft, insignificant thud. "Arthur," she called, her voice clear and strong. "We're done here. Let's go." As the Maybach pulled away from the curb, Elara Ventura did not look back at the towers of the city. She looked forward, toward a horizon built not on arrogance, but on the unshakable foundation of her own quiet, absolute power. The anchor had been cut, the dead weight had sunk, and the chairwoman was finally, completely, free to soar.